Are you seeing all those cute baby chicks for sale and thinking about getting some for laying hens? If so, you've come to the right place. Here's a Chicks 101 guide so you know what you need before bringing your chicks home, what characteristics to look for so you choose the right breed, how to care for your chickens once you get them home, and many other tips. We're also going to talk about when they're ready to graduate to backyard chickens because they don't stay cute and little for very long, and when you can expect your first eggs. So first, let's talk about what you need before bringing your chicks home. You're going to need a heat source, a waterer, a feeder, some bedding, and a brooder. In choosing a heat source, you have a couple of options. You can use a traditional heat lamp. If you do that, it's highly recommended that you use a red bulb. Or a great alternative is a brooder heating plate. I have linked both the traditional heat lamp and the brooder heating plate in my description box, so check those out. Your waterer and your feeder are just what they sound. Your waterer holds the water and your feeder holds the feed. The feed itself is an important consideration as well. We always choose a feed that's non-GMO and preferably organic. And you always want to make sure that you're starting your chicks off with a feed that's marked as a starter feed. We want to make sure that our chicks are getting the right ratios of protein, calcium, and other vital nutrients at any given stage of development. And the proper formulas have already been developed for us so that at any stage in development, it's going to be easy on us to pick the right feed. And so starting out, you just want to make sure you're getting that starter feed. A popular choice for bedding is pine shavings. We've always gotten pine shavings and been very happy with the result. The bedding is basically acting as an odor absorber and creating a soft and cozy surface for your chicks. And finally, to put all of these things along with your chicks in, you are going to want to get a brooder. You can get a brooder, you can make a brooder. A brooder is essentially just the home that your chicks are going to be dwelling in until they are ready to go outside. You can get pretty creative in creating your brooder. We always just prefer to go with something that is easy or something that we might already have on hand that we can purpose into a brooder. Plastic totes work well for this purpose, and that's often what we have chosen to use. So now let's talk about how you're going to be taking care of your chicks once you get them home. Chicks are messy. So if you buy chicks, you have just gotten yourself a new hobby, and that hobby is cleaning up after them. Their water is going to be changed at least 2 times a day, but sometimes up to 4 or 5 times a day. And elevating their water is something that can definitely help in making their water be changed less frequently. I've actually included a link in the description box for a device that I just found online today that you can use to hang the water to prevent the chicks from kicking up wood shavings and chicken poo into their water. And it really looks amazing and it has great reviews. So I highly recommend checking that out. Having that or some type of system that can elevate their water as high as possible is going to prevent a lot of work on your part. Just like their water, their feeder needs to be cleaned out regularly. Their bedding is also something that's going to need to require attention on your part. We like to change our bedding out once a day just to make sure that there are not any bad odors coming from the chickens. There are some important things to know about caring for your chicks. If you want chicks that are going to be easier to handle later on as they are chickens, I highly recommend that you hold them often when they're in this stage. They're just going to be getting used to you, they're going to be used to being handled, and it really does make for a better relationship in the future with your chicken. Thankfully, our children love playing with our chicks, so it's pretty easy for them to get lots of holding time without me making any effort on my end. And so if you have children who know how to properly handle chicks and who would be excited for that job, then I highly recommend making them in charge of keeping your chickens tame. The next thing that I want to recommend that's important is to get some type of screen or covering to go over the top of your brooder. It really doesn't take long at all before the chicks start flying out if they don't have something to prevent them from doing so. It really is surprising how high they can fly up and how determined they are once they get a little bit older. Also, you just really want to watch your chicks and pay attention to their comfort. If they're all huddled together under the heat lamp, then they're cold. Or if they're all separated far apart and they're trying to avoid the heat lamp, then you just need to adjust the positioning of the lamp accordingly so that you can make sure that they're at a comfortable temperature. On a whole, caring for chicks is a pretty easy job. It just does require monitoring them on your part and making sure that they regularly have the things that they need: food, water, and clean bedding. However, there is the rare instance that chicks do get sick. And one common sickness that chicks can develop is called pasty butt. And pasty butt is when their vent gets clogged. Chickens have a vent, and their vent is actually where they urinate out of, where they defecate out of. It's also where in the future their eggs will come out of and they will reproduce. But occasionally they can develop an issue where they have a clogging of their system. And essentially on the outside of their bottom, it'll be very easy for you to see it. They will have poo just building up. And when that happens, it can clog their vent and make it so that they're unable to pass any more waste. If this happens for any length of time, then the chick can develop an infection and the chick can eventually die. So if they do develop pasty butt, you just want to make sure that you are able to clean that area off. So you can use a warm cloth and rub the area clean. You can use olive oil or something else, and that might break it up a little bit easier. It's not a fun job, and it's not something that we've had to deal with very often at all in the 9 or so years that we've had chicks. It really has only happened a couple times, but it is something that you want to pay attention to because when it does happen, it can become deadly. Now, the best gauge to see if your chicks are at an ideal temperature is to just look at their behavior, what they look like. But the ideal temperature about for a brooder is 95 degrees during the first week. And then you're going to be lowering that temperature about 5 degrees every week after that. And that's just preparing them so that they will be ready to go outside eventually. So when do you move chicks from the brooder out to the coop? Typically that's done around 6 to 8 weeks of age and when the temperature outside is 50 degrees or above. A chicken can actually catch hypothermia if they're put out too early and if the temperatures are too low. But if you have a way to keep them warm in their coop, then they can do well outside at an earlier age or at a lower temperature. You really want to make sure that when you are putting them out that they have a way that they can stay warm, that you have a heat lamp available to them if they need it, that they're in a draft-free place. They are a pretty hardy animal, but you would hate for them to get hypothermia. It has happened to us one time, and it was devastating to find that sad loss. So after you've put your chicks outside, when can you expect eggs? When do chickens actually start laying? Typically, chickens start laying around 6 months of age, but this does vary by breed. Production bred varieties, these are chickens who were specifically designed for egg factories, can start laying as early as 4.5 months. These are chickens like white leghorns, production reds, and the sex-link varieties. But you'll be able to tell that your chicken is going to be laying eggs soon because its comb, that's the flap of skin on the top of its head, is going to turn bright red, and so are their wattles. And those are like the flaps of skin that are along the side of their neck. They will be bright red, and you'll see that your chicken is going to start laying soon. So in choosing the perfect chicken breed, there are quite a number of considerations, and you're going to want to determine which ones are most important to you. Because I really don't think that there's one perfect breed that's going to fit every single desire that we have in our chickens. But I think we can definitely find a breed or a few breeds that are going to fit a number of our considerations and that we will be very happy with. So the first consideration I want to talk about is the number of eggs that your chicken's going to produce. The production bred varieties are going to lay more eggs per week, but over time they're going to be laying far less. They're actually only going to be laying for 2 years, whereas heritage breeds, many dual purpose breeds, are going to be laying less eggs per week, but they're going to be laying for a longer period of time over their life. They can lay for up to 7 years. The next consideration is the egg color. Now, egg color has nothing to do with the nutrients in an egg. It really is simply aesthetics, but it is very important to some people. There's a lot of variety in egg color than what you'll find in a standard supermarket. There are blue eggs, green eggs, olive eggs, chocolate brown eggs, and of course, white and light brown eggs. Different breeds just lay different colored eggs. The next consideration is the chicken's eating habits. Specifically, when I mentioned the eating habits, I'm interested in how much feed is a particular chicken breed going to be costing me? How much feed are they eating? In general, larger chickens are going to eat more feed. Also, there are certain breeds that have better foraging ability than others. Certain chickens are able to go out and find food on their own. As long as you're giving them some pasture, giving them some land to roam, they can get a good amount of their feed on their own, and it's going to cost less money. The next consideration is the chicken's personality. Different birds are bred for different purposes. We were just talking about foraging, and foraging is something that's important to me because I want to pay the least amount in feeding my chickens as is possible. However, some of the best foragers are also very flighty. Now, it makes a lot of sense because these are chickens who are going to be out finding their own food, so they need to develop instincts to protect themselves. But as far as making chickens your pets, an excellent forager might not be so interested in your companionship. However, there are many docile breeds that are very easy to handle and even enjoy companionship. The next consideration is the temperament of the rooster. You may not want roosters at all, so the temperament of roosters may not make a difference to you either way. However, in particular when you're buying chicks, sometimes you will end up getting roosters. So you're going to need to determine ahead of time what you are going to do in the case that you do have roosters in your flock. If you're open to keeping them, then their temperament may be important to you. For our family, a mean rooster is a non-negotiable, and there are some breeds of chicken that though they meet many of our other requirements, we will not buy them just because they're known for having mean roosters. So if having mean roosters is something that is a non-negotiable for you as well, find out the typical personality of roosters in the breeds that you're researching. The next consideration is whether a breed is known to typically go broody. And a broody hen is just a hen who's laying on eggs. She's expecting that she's going to hatch eggs. She's excited. It is going to be hard to get her off of those eggs because all she wants to do is hatch them out. So you need to know ahead of time, do you want a hen that's going to hatch eggs, or do you prefer that they don't? Certain breeds are going to be more inclined to go broody than others. Now, if you don't have a rooster, whether a chicken goes broody or not is really of no consequence because she's not going to be able to hatch chicks out of the eggs. But if you do have a rooster, knowing ahead of time whether you want a broody chicken, maybe that's something that you really want, or maybe it's something that you don't really want. Either way, find out as you're looking at breeds which ones are going to be more inclined to go broody or which ones are going to be less inclined. And the final factor we look at when determining a chicken breed is the hardiness of that particular breed. Your climate is going to be a pretty important consideration in the variety of chickens that you buy. If your weather gets extremely hot, if your weather gets extremely cold, you are going to want to pick birds that can tolerate the temperatures that you have. I've shared in the description box a website that's going to help you determine the best chicken breed for you. Now, on this website, in this list, you are not going to find all of the considerations that I've discussed here, but there are quite a few considerations that they have listed. They've laid it out neatly in a graph form, and they have egg production, egg color, whether the bird is heat hardy, cold hardy, what type of purpose that the chicken is used for, whether it's a meat bird or an egg bird, whether the chicken is a chicken that goes broody. And also they have the mating ratio, how many male to female birds is recommended, and also the roost level. So how high up you're going to need to put your roost bars in their coop so that they can be at a comfortable height while they're sleeping. I highly recommend checking out that website to get you started in picking out the right breed for your family. Raising chickens is so much fun, and raising chickens from chicks is really a rewarding experience. It has been a passion of our families for at least 9 years, and it's something that I highly recommend if you have the space. And really, chickens don't require that much space. They don't require that much time overall, especially once they get out of the chick stage, and you have such a better egg quality as you are raising the chickens fresh in your backyard. You know exactly what they're eating. And they will eat so many of your kitchen scraps that otherwise you would be throwing away. Please give us a thumbs up if you found this video helpful, and if you're interested in more videos like this, please subscribe. We're by no means chicken experts, but we've had chickens for quite a few years, so if you have any questions, please feel free to share them in the comments below, and we will do our best to answer. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye!